We're going to continue part 2 on the spirit of leadership. And I want to begin this session talking about the most important part of leadership, and that is philosophy. Philosophy. We're going to talk about leadership philosophy because philosophy is the result of your mentality. The word philosophy, write it down. It's from 2 words put together. It's a grammatical construct. The word philo, P-H-I-L-O, obviously you know it means to love. And osophy means to think or to know. To think or to know. So when you put the 2 words together, philosophy, it means to be in love with your thoughts. So a philosopher is a person who loves what they're thinking about while they think about what they thought about while they thought about it while they were thinking. Now they think about while they think about what they thought about while they fell in love with what they thought about while they was thinking. In other words, they become so in love with their thoughts, they begin to believe them. A philosopher is one who explores his own thoughts until he concludes what we call a concept that becomes a theory, that becomes a belief, which then becomes a conviction that becomes the regulator of his behavior. Therefore, philosophy is dangerous because philosophy controls your life. Every person in the world has a philosophy. The man sleeping under the bridge tonight on a cardboard box has a philosophy he lives by. The man who sells drugs to the young people on your streets have a philosophy. The bank robber has a philosophy. The prostitute has a philosophy that controls her life. The corrupt preacher has a philosophy. The politician has a philosophy that controls how he makes decisions on bills that come before him in the Senate. You have a philosophy that you live by. Philosophy can be defined as your way of thinking. So I'm going to share with you what has become my philosophy of leadership. And these have all been a result of my falling in love with the thoughts of the mentality of Jesus Christ, who is the greatest leader that ever lived, ultimate leader of all time. So what I'm going to give you are what I have deduced from his thought patterns, his philosophy of life, which has become mine. Number 1, his philosophy says, trapped in every follower is a hidden leader or an untapped leader. Jesus taught that every human being is a leader that is untapped. Secondly, his philosophy was that the goal of leadership is to release the hidden leader in followers, not to maintain followers. As a matter of fact, this philosophy is important because it regulates the way a leader treats his or her followers. This philosophy results in the fact that true leadership is not about maintaining followers, but rather to produce leaders. This philosophy also means that a true leader does not measure his or her success by how many people follow him or her. They measure their success by how much they become unnecessary. So true leadership is about working yourself out of a job. I'm coming. This is the mentality of Jesus. I'm going to prove it to you in a minute. And thirdly, true leadership focuses on producing leaders, not maintaining followers. As a matter of fact, you will find in most of our material, we teach this strong philosophy, and that is leadership is not measured by what happens in your presence, but what happens in your absence. If your organization falls apart when you leave, you are not a leader. If your organization decreases in your absence, you are a poor leader. Leadership is measured by what happens in your absence, because that's the measure of how well you've produced leaders. Jesus stated his philosophy this way: it is better for you that I go away. For if I do not go away, you will not be able to do greater works than your leader did. So my absence is in your best interest. He proved his leadership success by leaving. And his company grew in his absence. I work for it. He has the oldest company in history, 2,000-year-old company. The simple product, kingdom. Distribution is worldwide. I was a client, now I'm a distributor. How about you? Clap if you're a distributor. Come on. Yeah. He was the first founding CEO of a company that invented globalization. Globalization is as old as Jesus. Let me quote his globalization policy: go into all the world and take my product. That was 2,000 years ago. So let no one fool you about globalization being a new idea. Leadership is producing leaders, not maintaining followers. Philosophy. Here's one I think you should remember. The capacity and ability to lead resides in every human being. That's a philosophical statement. Number two, leadership is like a tree trapped in a seed. That's a philosophy. If you believe that, then you will not throw people away. You will not cancel people who fail. Because you will believe that trapped under that behavior is an awesome, untapped person. That's why Jesus went after Peter after he failed. Because he knew he was still the leader. Philosophy. Number three, leadership manifestation requires the right environment. It has to be cultivated, and it has to be given opportunity. You know, a seed has more than you think in it. A seed has a forest. But if you took that seed with the forest on the inside and put it on the windowsill of your bathroom on the tile and leave it there for 45 years, it would remain a seed. So the forest will be trapped. Why? Because it lacks the right environment. So even though there are great people sitting next to you, they may be retarded by being in the wrong environment, not being properly cultivated. This is why in a conference like this, it's important to come to this, take a day off and come to this, rather than going to a ball game. Because a ball game does not germinate nor fertilize your dreams. Everybody say environment. See, when you leave here today, you will be completely transformed because of the environment I'm creating here. There are things happening in you now you can't even understand. When I leave, you're going to realize that guy messed me up. He changed my thinking, and that's good, because now as a man thinketh, so is he. Clap right there. You're going to be a different woman. and a different man, a better pastor, a better CEO, a better president, a better student. Why? Because of cultivation of your environment. That's what a book is. A book to me is fertilizer. So I read books to fertilize my dream. I listen to CDs in my car to fertilize my dream. Why? While I'm driving in traffic, instead of getting mad in traffic, I don't get mad, I get ahead. If you're stuck, you might as well grow while you're stuck in traffic. Come on, understand that? That's why you get CDs of good quality teaching like this to fertilize your dream while you are waiting. Cultivate the seed. True leadership is manifested in attitude. I think we have concluded that today in discussing the attitude of Caleb and Joshua. They manifested, according to God, their leadership was manifested in their attitude, their spirit of the mind. Now, I want to take you on a little journey here a little bit and talk about the inherent leadership spirit versus the spirit of leadership. There are two terms I want you to become well acquainted with. The first term is the leadership spirit. And the second term is the spirit of leadership. They are different. The leadership spirit is what every human was born with. You and I were born with the leadership spirit. That means you have an inherent ability naturally to be a leader. Every human does. But the average human dies and never develops it. The cemetery is filled with untapped leaders. The capacity to lead, therefore, resides in you. But the manifestation of it is being prevented by your environment, your culture, your social upbringing, and even your entire family. I am convinced with all my heart that every human being possesses this spirit, but very few will have the will to bring it forth because their wills have been broken by society. As a matter of fact, most of us are trapped in a career, so we cannot pursue our dreams. It is also my conviction that you were born to lead, but you must become a leader. Write that down, very important statement. The word become has to do with process. Every tree is a forest, but it has to become the forest. Every boy is a man, but he has to become a man. Every girl is actually a woman, trapped in a little girl, but she has to become the woman. And same thing is true about the leadership in you. You were born to be a leader, but you must become a leader. And this is the part where most people fail. They never experience who they really are because the environment is never right. This is why Jesus Christ, in his Leadership Training Institute, took his students away from their homes. He made them leave their village, leave their family, leave their friends, and they had to stay with him, isolated with him, because he needed to put them in the right environment to tap into the world changer power in them. That's why we have a Leadership Institute. Because my purpose is to isolate you for a few days so that you can be away from the influences that are inhibiting your release. He kept them isolated for 3.5 years. He turned them from villages to world changers. Their mentality was transformed. They went and challenged entire governments. They stood before the governors of the city and challenged them. These were just fishermen. But their mentality was transformed because of the environment. That's why it's important for you to get the books you're getting and the tapes you're getting and the CDs. These are all environmental controllers. Every time I buy a book, I don't buy a book. I actually bought a person. And I take them home with me, and they talk to me all night while I'm reading. And I'm hearing the environment change. They are talking to me, see? That's why you must monitor television from now on and keep it off as much as possible, because you got to make sure your environment is conducive to your manifestation. Very important. Write this down. Having the leadership spirit means that you are naturally created to lead. Born with it. Imagine you were born to be a leader, but not over people. And that's the big philosophical difference between what we teach in our institute courses and what the other companies teach. Leadership is not about leading people. It's about self-discovery. True leaders do not seek followers. I repeat, true leaders do not seek followers. I repeat, true leaders do not seek followers. Why? Because followers seek true leaders. It's reversed. What attracts followers to true leaders is the person's independence from them. I went over your head, I could sense it. Okay. See, a true leader is not motivated by people following him or her. They found something more important than the people. They found an assignment. It is their passion for their assignment that attracts people. I'll give you an example that hopefully you won't forget. One time, the greatest leader of all time did a miracle. He fed a few people, a few thousand of them, and they were impressed. They were impressed by his act. So they decided to follow him. And he ended up having, in one day, his organization grew from 12 to 70. So when the 70 was with him, he was nervous about it. So he stopped and he called a meeting. He asked them a question. Here's the question. And it's a question that most leaders won't ask their followers. Why are you following me? Before they could answer, he answered it for them. He said, I know why you're following me. Is it not because of the fish and bread that I gave you yesterday? You don't really follow me. You are following what you could get from me. And then he said, if you want to be a part of my institute, if you want to be one of my students, you have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. Now, he was not talking about cannibalism. He was talking about the level of commitment to his interests, not theirs. They were interested in their own private ambition. They wanted free lunch. They were following him for what they could get, not for what he was trying to achieve. So when they heard this, the record says they had a meeting among themselves in the hall. And they discussed among themselves what he said. And their conclusion was, he's demanding too much. He wants us to commit ourselves to his program, not ours. So they came back and told him, we can't follow you anymore. You are demanding too much commitment. And it says they forsook him. They left his company. Now, I want you to think about this. 70 plus 12 is 82. That means your company has grown 800% in one day. And in one day, it fell 80%. Now, you would think that would depress a leader. If 80% of your people leave you tomorrow, you go into depression. Why? Because you're not a true leader. Now, watch how a true leader responds to 80% loss in clientele. It says, then he turned to the 12 and said unto them, do you want to go also? That's heavy. Because he was telling them, you want to leave also? I will go if I go by myself. See, a true leader is not in the business for the sake of the followers. You'll get it after I'm gone. A true leader is someone who discovered something more important than the followers. They discovered a purpose, a destiny, an assignment, a reason for living and dying. Listen, if what you're doing, you are not willing to do it alone, you are not a leader yet. In essence, true leaders do not seek for the approval of their followers. True leadership is not a popularity contest. If you like to be liked by people, you will always be a follower. True leadership is the capacity to sacrifice relationships for the sake of purpose. Are you willing to leave also, he says. And his best friend said, we really would like to leave. We think you're crazy. But we have discovered that what you're doing makes so much sense. We've found that it gives us life and meaning. Write this down, please. The spirit of leadership is different. One is inherent, the other one is learned. The spirit of leadership refers to the attitude, the mentality, the mindset that is necessary for the spirit of leadership to be manifested. In other words, the capacity exists, but the mentality needs to manifest it. In other words, without the spirit of leadership, the leadership spirit will remain dormant. You sitting here in this room, and I'm talking to you, whether you are 7 or 79, you have within you a leader that is trapped by your mentality. And until the mentality becomes appropriate for the leadership that's on the inside, you will never manifest yourself. Let me say this. True leadership, therefore, is not about proving anything to anybody. It's about being yourself. Having the spirit of leadership means that you understand and demonstrate the mindset of a leader. You have become one with your nature. This is very important because true leaders never try to be leaders. It is a natural manifestation of their reconnection with their true self. They decide to become themselves. That's why true leaders are naturally humble. You do not meet a true leader who needs to be humble. Let me tell you something about humility that may shock you. Write the word humble down. It's a very important word, humble. In my book out there on becoming a leader, I hope you get that book out there, I talk about 21 specific qualities of a leader. One of them is humility. And humility is misunderstood. You got the word humble down? Okay. The word humble is an important word. To be humble or to have humility. Look at the first stem of the word. What do you see? H-U-M, hum. Okay. That's because the original Greek and Hebrew word of the word humble is from the word, write this down, humus. Humus, H-U-M-U-S. It is the word dirt or earth. The word humus is the foundational concept of humility. Matter of fact, because to be humble means to be earthy. The reason why it is used in Scripture that way is because to be humble means to be earthy, because it refers to what humans are. Humans are dirt, which means be yourself. So anyone who has to be humble or has to pretend to be humble or try to be humble, what they are telling you is they are not themselves. It's very important. That's why a true leader doesn't try to be humble. They're too busy being themselves. I am what I am. It's just me. I love me a lot. Now, let me just say one thing about humility. Humility, therefore, always shows up in confidence. When a person is themselves, they manifest a natural confidence. Now, the problem is people who are insecure that are around them, they always call confidence arrogance. Please buy this CD because I can't get you to understand all of it. See, it's important to therefore note that a true leader doesn't pretend. If they're good at something, they're good at it. And they don't brag about it. It's just what I am. I'm good at this. That's humility. That's why a true leader uses words like I am, which are words that your culture taught you shouldn't use. In other words, your culture doesn't want you to be yourself. Because the moment you become yourself, they cannot control you anymore. This is too deep for you. That's why a true leader is only a leader when they declare independence from their culture. You cannot change a culture you are a part of. That's why a true leader changes history. They step away from the culture and become themselves, and they impact the culture. Listen, this is very important. Society, therefore, will tell you, do not use these words. I am. Your parents taught you that. Stop using the word I all the time. I. That's selfish. It's not selfish. It is self-consciousness. No one in the world, my son, has ever used the words I am more than Jesus. And yet we call him the most humble man that ever lived. Contradiction. If you met him, you would be intimidated by him. Guaranteed. Because no one walked around a village using terms like, I am the bread of life. I am the water of life. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. I am the resurrection. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. I am. And then he says, for I am lowly and humble. It is sweet. In other words, I am myself. I'm not pretending to be the bread of life. That's just what I am. It's humility. I guess the bottom line for you is, have you discovered who you am? Because if you don't know who you are actually somebody else. And that's why you wear other people. Calvin Klein, Giorgio, Yves Saint Laurent, Nike. See, we wear people to give us value.
Very good.
It's a sign that you are sick. Mentally sick. If you need things to be important, you are in danger. When you know who you are, you can be born in a cave and still be a king. If you don't believe me, ask Yeshua HaMashiach. So you don't need things to be important if you are a true leader. You make things important by their association with you. It's very important. That's why true leaders are always paid money to wear other people's clothes. You still don't get it. They have a line of clothing now that is actually made based on my teachings. It's being sold in California. It's called the Purpose Line. And they have my quotes in all the clothing. Because they want to associate it with leadership. So that leaders would buy the clothing. It's doing pretty good. Write this down. I'm going to give you a list of what the spirit of leadership looks like. I'm going to do this very quickly, so you better write fast. Number one, the spirit of leadership is a mindset. Number two, it dictates your motivation. Number three, it is revealed in your response to the environment. Number four, it is a perception of yourself and your perception of the world. Number five, it is the conviction that regulates your thoughts about yourself and others. Number six, it is your personal private philosophy of life. That's your spirit of leadership. Number seven, it is your thoughts about yourself and your environment. Number eight, it is your belief system which controls your behavior. Number nine, it is the source of your actions which determine the response of how you interpret the world. That's your spirit of leadership. And number 10, spirit of leadership is your mental conditioning. That's how important attitude is. It controls everything. Buy the CD. Okay, you crybabies. My wife and I were on a cruise in a little boat with 8 people. And we were going on a safari vacation in the Carib River, going up from South Africa to Namibia and through Zimbabwe. It was a whole week. And this was one of those unique safaris where you stay on the boat because in the water there are, crocodiles, whatever they call them, alligators, the piranhas and all this stuff. So the guy says, you can't go in the water. And they had our own cook, and the cook was also the captain. So we had this great story. And we were spending a week there because he had worked very hard in South Africa for a whole week, dealing with about, maybe 7,000, 8,000 people every night for about 3 or 4 days. And so we wanted a little break, and we took this cruise. It was great. We came to an area right outside between Zimbabwe and Zambia and Namibia area, and this was a wild area, jungle. And we were seeing all the beautiful animals. It was like National Geographic. It was fantastic. See the giraffes and the elephants and all this stuff. And then the sun began to set on that night, and all of a sudden, the captain says, uh-oh, we got problems. I said, what? He said, you hear that sound? And, everything was dim. The sun was setting and it was gloomy. And he said, you heard that sound over there? I said, yes. He said, that's the lions. I said, what does that mean? He said, they're going to feed tonight. We heard, whoo, 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 whoo. I mean, it sounded like thunder, you know. A whole lot of them just go, whoo, whoo, this kind of growling sound. And he said, we're going to tie the boat up here for the night, and we'll, be able to see what they're going to do. So he took the boat up by the shore, jumped on a stump, tied the rope, jumped back on the boat, and then he let the rope out so the boat could drift back into the middle of the water, because he said, we can't be close to shore. It won't be safe. And so here we are, beautiful moon setting. I mean, this lovely night, National Geographic perfection. We saw giraffes, everybody began to move around, and because the lions were coming. And he says, I hope that they come so we can see everything. And they did. And here comes this pride of lions coming, making this sound, and the females and the males are all together. And suddenly we heard some noise coming through the bush, and there's this herd of elephants coming. And my eyes beheld something I never forgot. The lions, very small, compared to the elephants. They are very small animals. And the elephants appeared, and they were pushing down the trees with their trunks. I mean, just moving through the forest. And the lions all got quiet, and they crouched down in the grass. And we were watching this right there on the shore. And I'm excited because we were on the top of the boat in chairs, sitting down. It's like front seat. National Geographic movie here, And here comes these elephants, and the lions are all crouching quiet, and they're moving around. And they're all staring in the same direction. And suddenly the elephants appeared in the moonlight. You can see the silhouette. I mean, beautiful. And suddenly the elephants began to recognize that the lions were there, and they began to make noise, and they began to move away. And the lions decided, I mean, you could almost hear them thinking. They looked at the elephant and decided, there's our meal. Now you would think, these monsters, these are Mack trucks. Monsters, tons and tons of weight. And the little cat decided, that's meal for me tonight. Because their mentality is, it's not the size of the animal. It's my desire to eat. The thoughts of a leader. And suddenly, they crouched. One of them dashed toward the monstrous elephant. The other elephants ran through the bush, and this one jumped and leaped up, and he put his claws around the big neck of the elephant, dug his teeth into his side of his head, and he dug his claws into the carcass, and his body was hanging and swinging. Another one jumped to the back and jumped up on the hip and put his claws in, dug his teeth in. The other one came around the side and dug on the other side of the leg. And here's this elephant with 3 or 4 of these female lions, and he begins to rock, and they begin to swing, just swing, swing. And he is trying to shake them off. And I'm standing there thinking, this is amazing. I am watching the king at work. And no matter how much that elephant swang and swang and swang, and they're flipping around like pieces of rags, just in the air, just flopping around. I mean, and he's making noise and swinging them, and they just held on. And I was shocked to see leadership at work. And they refused to let go. And suddenly, the elephant slowed down because the lions or lionesses that was so light before became like lead because they wouldn't let go. And suddenly the elephant fell under the weight of his own body, his knees, and then he fell on his side, rolled over, and the rest of the lions went to work. And I sat there thinking, that's why they are the king of the jungle. That's leadership. First of all, the size of the dream didn't intimidate them. I don't know how big your dream is today, but I've come to tell you that your dream is your meal. Go get it. The second thing I learned from those kings and queens that day is that when you dig your teeth into a problem, Your problem have problems. You don't let go. Some of you right now are being swung around by life. Your dream is telling you can't find a building and it ain't going to work and it'll never happen. You can't get a radio station. There'll never be a TV station owned by you. And I'm come to tell you, hang on to the elephant. Some of you got a business inside of you and God is telling you to start that business. You say, it's too big. God says, shut up and hang on. Life is that way. Life will check to see if you let go. It's just an elephant. To you, it's just a meal. And the third thing I learned is if you hang on long enough, you become the weight. Everything I've accomplished, I had to bring it down. That's just the way life is, sir. Madam, you got to bring it down. The lions believed that they were greater than the elephant. Not bigger, greater. It's leadership. They found out something about themselves that the elephant didn't know. They knew they were greater, not bigger. There's a gentleman whose name is Mr. Mallory, who was one of the first men to attempt to climb Mount Everest. And this man put his party together. They trained for months and months, decided to go and climb Mount Everest. And we know what happened to him. Almost to the summit, a snowdrift hit. Here comes tons of snow down the mountain, wiped out his entire team. Mr. Mallory died. All of his team died except 2 men. He never made it to the mountaintop. A couple of months later, they had a celebration honoring him and his death and his great attempts. And at that particular event, they invited the 2 men who had survived to speak at the luncheon. One of them stood up to speak on behalf of the team. He got up and spoke. And they had this luncheon in the same valley where Mount Everest was. And they could see from the window of the restaurant, the mountain in the distance. And the man stood up, began to speak at the podium. He began to weep because he remembered his boss and how they died and perished. And he even felt a little guilty that they had survived. And while he was speaking, suddenly he began to forget about the audience. It seemed he just went toward the window and he went into a daze and he started talking no longer to the people. He started talking to the mountain through the window. And here's what he said. He said, Mount Everest, you defeated us once. You defeated us twice. You defeated us 3 times. But we will defeat you. Someone will climb you one day because you cannot get any bigger, but we could get better. Two months later, the first one to climb Mount Everest made it to the top. That's the way lions think. That's the way leaders think. The problem can't get any bigger, but you could get better. We are what we think, and we become what we continue to think. And that's why sitting in a conference like this is important. Take a break from life where your thoughts are not stimulated and come to a place where you are beginning to think bigger, better, and more in touch with your true self. I suggest to you that you cannot rise above the plane of your mental conditioning. Never. And that's why it's important to keep reading, keep listening to new information, keep getting to know new people. As a matter of fact, you need to perhaps change your company after this conference. Let me tell you something about your associations. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future. I found out something, that if you are the smartest one in the group right now, it's time to change the group. I'm going to say that again because some of you missed it. If you are the smartest one in your group, it's time to leave the group because they can no longer help you. This is why God would bring new people into your life, like me, to stretch you, to make you think beyond your little narrow limitation on your friends. That's why leaders choose their friends based on their destination. Most of us, we like people who have things in common with us. That's why you're not growing. Write this down. Until you learn something new, you are not growing. The capacity for you to grow is determined by the level of new information you keep exposing yourself to. So you must choose your friends and your company based on your dream. When you hang around people who are involved in a lot of money, their mentality is different. That's why most Christians are poor. Because the people they hang around with have nothing. And so they got to have nothing clubs. They sit down and talk about what they don't have, what they wish they had. Jesus recognized two things. One, you're stuck with your family. Two, you can choose your friends. So he left his family and chose his friends. Clap. Good place to clap. Do that and you'll make it. I have been brought into this country. I had 17 invitations competing for this weekend. 17. I don't need to look for an audience to speak to. I have one permanent at home. The 17 invitations were for larger meetings than this in countries all over the world. But when I prayed, God says, go to Australia this time. Which meant that there is someone sitting in your chair who was supposed to hear this. So he imported me just for you. You must be lions. He brings people into your life because he wants to take you to another circle of influence and exposure. So I've come because my circle is government leaders, which means that you're about to go to the next level if I am going to become associated with you. Anybody ready for the big times? You can tell where God wants to take you by the people he brings into your life. And it might mean leaving the ones you are with. Write this down. To change your life, you must change your mind. And that might mean you have to change your friends. Gosh, I have so much more to say to you. But my time is gone and you cannot take it. me give you a couple thoughts before we go. 7 principles of true leadership. You got to write this down. Very important. Number 1, 7 principles. Number 1, true leadership is inherent in the human spirit. Number 2, true leadership cannot be taught, but it must be discovered. And number 3, true leadership is self-discovery, not techniques and methods. Number 4, true leadership is serving your gift to the world. And number 5, true leadership is self-deployment, not employment. And number 6, true leadership is self-manifestation, not proving yourself to anybody. And number 7, true leadership is self-exposure. When you expose your real self, you become a leader. The real gift that you are. I have a new book. I just signed a contract with one of the largest publishing companies in the world, Time Warner. And the book that they want me to write on is a very interesting subject I've been working on for about 15 years. This will be the first book I've done on this subject. It's called The Power of Servant Leadership. And the whole research is based on Jesus and his philosophy. And they want to publish it, which is nice. And the contract is worth money, plenty money. So I signed a contract. I tell them, sure. This book is going to be dealing with this issue of what true leadership is. And I want to give this to you before you leave. See, servant leadership does not mean subservience. It's completely the opposite. True leadership is when you serve yourself to the world. So before you can serve yourself to the world, you have to first discover yourself. So servant leadership is finding your gift and serving it to the world. It's different from what you think. Jesus said, if you want to be great, you don't become great by suppressing other people, oppressing other people, and making other people inferior. He said that's the way the system of the world operates. They like to lord it over one another. He said, but it shall not be so in my kingdom. In my country, in my culture, he says, greatness is opposite. Greatness is becoming a servant or a slave to the masses. You serve yourself to the masses. I put it this way. True greatness is self-distribution. That's what I'm doing right now. I am serving you my gift. Here's the way he concluded. He says, look at me, he says. The Son of Man did not come to be served by many, but to serve himself, a ransom to many. Why? I am ransom. That's my gift, he says, and I serve it to many. That's why I'm great. The key to leadership, my dear, therefore has nothing to do with titles, nothing to do with techniques, methods, or skills. It has to do with you finding out your gift and refining it and serving it to us. We will seek you out for it. Makes you great. Therefore, true leadership is self-discovery. I'm a slave. That's why I'm debt free. Paradox. I'm a slave. That's why I'm here and you were there. I'm the slave. Because while you were sleeping, I had to be studying all last night. Jesus asked a question one time. The disciples were arguing, who's the greatest, who's the greatest? And he heard them. He said, what are you all talking about? He said, if you want to be great, he said, watch this. And he calls a little child. He puts in the middle of them. He says, you want to be great? Then become like this little child. Now, what does he mean? He said, because in the kingdom of God, you become great when you act like a little child. Now, you got to study children. You tell children, go get my shoes. Go get some water. Go pick that up for me. And they just go. He says, if you want to be great, just do what everybody says. Become the servant. And then he says, who is greater? The one sitting at the table or the one who serves? I met Michael Jordan a few times. One time we were chatting. What an amazing guy. And he had read a few of my books, so he recognized me. His office was in the hotel where I was living. He has an office in a hotel. And I was living in the hotel. And we were coming down the elevator at the same time I met him. And he looked at me. He said, I know you. And I said, I know you. And we laughed for a little bit. And he said, man, your books have changed my life. I said, your hopes have changed my life. We began to chat a little bit. And I found out something, of course, years ago. That is, when you are in the presence of greatness, you don't talk much. You ask questions. Remember that. Because questions are the greatest way to education. So I asked him a lot of questions. One of them asked, I said, what's your secret to your success? I mean, look at you, man. Your name is worth $300 million. What's your secret? He said, I'm just being myself. He said, I work harder than the people who watch me. Now, he's getting ready to teach me servant leadership, see? He said, when I first began in high school, my coach told me I will never be a basketball player. I was the most discoordinated young man. I had no kind of coordination. I couldn't bounce a ball properly. He says, my coach told me you will never play basketball, and threw me off the team. He said, I went home and wept, got mad. And by the way, don't miss tonight, because I'm going to teach you that getting mad is the only way to change. You don't change till you're mad, okay? So he said he got mad and decided, I will play basketball. And every morning, he said, he went to that old gym. 4 o'clock in the morning, nobody there. Just roaches and rats running across. And he would go there 4 o'clock every morning and take his basketball. And he just keeps shooting. Keep shooting. Everybody's sleeping. All the students are sleeping. Teachers are sleeping, including the teacher who's the coach. Everybody's sleeping. He's working. He said, I shot thousands of balls every morning. Just shot. I wanted to know how to shoot that ball in that basket. He said, months passed. That was my routine. All by myself. No one's up. I'd go there and just keep on shooting. He was a slave. See, the slave is up when the master is sleeping. And he said, suddenly it clicked, and I became so good, I would shoot with my eyes closed, and no one knew. He said that then the next semester, I went to school. Coach put me aside and said, you can't play basketball. One of the players got hurt, and he asked me to sit on the bench. Sit in for him. Sat in. So they began to lose. 2 of the players got hurt. They needed someone to come in. Asked him to come in. He came in, lanky guy. He says, I knew the basket. He said, I just told the guy, throw me the ball. Just throw me the ball. And they avoided him because they thought he couldn't play. And suddenly, one of the guys threw him the ball. He said, all of a sudden, 4 a.m. came upon him. And he knew he couldn't miss. And he said, 3-pointer. The coach said, that was lucky. He said, throw me the ball. They throw him the ball again. He said, 4 o'clock came upon him. The slave came upon him. 3 points. And the coach says, give it to him again. They came from behind and won by 16 points. MVP player. The coach says, I think you're doing better. He said, the rest is history. He said, and after the lights came on, the camera lights came on, with millions watching, I would still go to the gym at 4 o'clock because I'm a slave. I sat there and thought about Jesus. I said, that's servant leadership. He found his gift and he served it to the world. Because the Bible says, your gift, not your education, not your techniques, not your skills, not even your training, your gift will make room for you in the whole world and will bring you before kings. That's leadership. My prayer for you is that you would be so ignited when you leave this conference tonight that they'll make room for you in the world. God bless you and see you at the top.